Hi, Riya. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking at your score report that you shared. And of course, we know the score GMAT
Yeah,
695, a phenomenal score. Congratulations to start with. I'm just going
thank
to
you.
quickly open the score report just to quickly see your overall score, right? So you are on the 92nd percentile in quant, 96th percentile in verbal, and data insights is 94th percentile. You have a phenomenal score on verbal. So was this always the same, or were you always good at verbal, or was it the other way around?
Yeah, so mostly my verbal was almost always strong. But yes, the verbal in GMAT is very different, especially the critical reasoning part. So passages is something I'm very good, but critical reasoning was something I had to really work on.
Right, right. So, before we go about in depth about the GMAT preparation and perhaps even the score, the exam per se, I would just like to, would you like to just talk about yourself? And I saw your profile, you very impressive line of things. In fact, you're still an undergrad student,
Yeah,
but you've accomplished quite a lot. I would really love to hear about each of the accomplishment and what you currently doing as well. What are you studying? Could you just give a little bit brief about yourself, Riya?
sure. So currently I'm a third year at Shahid Sukhdev College of Business Studies, and I've achieved a lot, as you mentioned, but I think that was a lot part of how driven a college is. So the peers around me have motivated me a lot. So just to mention some of my achievements were like I've been participating in debating competitions because I realized that for an MBS and in just general life is not just about marks, right? So you need to have that communication skills. So I participated in debate competitions. I was featured in newspapers for my wins. Apart from that, I've also worked in the social impact sector a lot. So right from my school days, I've been working with underprivileged children to provide them English communication lessons. And right now, currently, I'm working with an organization named G17. So
Right.
that works in sustainable development goals. So I'm the vice chairperson for the Indian branch.
Right. It is just incredible. I mean, having so many feathers now, how impactful it could be on your application. You know it, and you know
Yeah,
that you're doing it. But beyond that, even the reach out to underprivileged students, teaching, the subject, because it's incredible. I've been there, during the time, and that feeling is incredible. Really,
yeah.
I must clearly applaud to what all you're doing, still being an undergrad. A big, big salute to you. So how did this GMAT per se, like I'm sure you mentioned you do want to look at MBA, but why
Yeah.
GMAT right now while you're still studying? Why preparing for it right now? Can you give me your aim and goal, what you saw through?
Yeah, sure. So actually, firstly, I wasn't really motivated to do the GMAT this year. I thought I'll just give it a try, and I joined an office and I decided to really want to do the foreign MBS. But then I had a senior and he told me this is the best time. I have my summer vacations. I can take as many leaves being from a DU college. So the attendance is a bit relaxed. So he told me you're in the mood of studying. So why not just give the GMAT? And especially since the GMAT is like for 5 years. So that is what really got me motivated. And then the top 1% course. So especially it being like a 6 month course and not like an unlimited time. So I knew I had to give the GMAT now that I've taken the course. So I think all of that really motivated me to give it this year itself.
I mean, could you just, because we've known a lot of seniors from, I mean, your senior or past us to senior from the same university. One of our favorite all time would be Harjas Gulati, right? And I don't know if you know, he must be super senior to you. He's already graduated from
Yeah.
London. But then, great. So that kind of diverted your attention towards, or rather, converged towards getting the GMAT. So when you initially started, what were your challenging areas, or what were the weaker areas or the stronger areas? Could you just highlight on that?
Sure. So right from the start, my content verbal were good, but they were good in an untimed manner. So whenever I tried to time myself, I saw my accuracy immediately doing like half of what I was doing time.
Hmm.
Untimed, right?
Right.
So that was a big problem, and that directly translated into my data insights section because data insights is actually focused a lot on what we learn in quant and verbal only. So that was something I had to work on time. And second of all, the biggest problem I had was on the difficult questions. So difficult questions were something that I knew I could solve, but I just couldn't get the answer between two options. So that was like the key factor. I could see right off the bat that most of the options are incorrect. But then the final leg, that was where the problem lied.
Right. So in through the preparation, do you recollect any resources or material that really stood out at the time when you were like maybe stuck? Was there any such situation where you were feeling stuck at certain section and any particular material did you realize that it really, really helped? If you recollect.
Yeah, so one of that was the top 1% doubts the Gmail thing. So that was something that really helped. So a lot of times we can get the explanations on the internet, but those are just how to solve it. But in case we know how to solve it, but we don't really understand the reason why it is being solved like that. So I really asked a lot of doubts in that specific manner from top 1%, and that really cleared a lot of things for me. And
So
apart from that, another thing that I really liked was the 700 to 800 level questions. So I knew that those were really difficult, but those are something that if I knew I got wrong, then that means that there is a weakness in my concept. So I did a lot of the 700 to 800 untimed only because whenever I did them timed, it just made me feel like I didn't know anything. So that was something that was helpful to me.
so for you, what was the timeline? How long did it actually, the preparation phase, how long did it actually take you to complete end to end, to complete the syllabus altogether? And how many hours did you see yourself giving into it?
Yeah, sure. So I started around 1.5 months back and I had a full-time internship.
Right.
So I could only devote like 2 hours a day each of the day and that too in a very tired state. So at the beginning of the course, thankfully, there were a lot of classes that I had to attend. So rather than practicing questions, I focused on building my concepts while I was tired. And any weekends that I had, I focused on giving the sectional tests, mock tests, and really solving the difficult questions. So on weekends, I gave like 6 hours. 6 hours was my maximum. I noticed whenever I studied more than 6 hours, the next day I couldn't study at all. Like I felt like my brain was really heavy and hurting. So I gave a cap to myself that I would not study more than 6 hours, no matter how much the deadlines are getting to me and the pressure is getting to me. So that was the overall strategy for 1 month, about 1 month. So 2 days on weekdays, 2 hours on weekdays, and 6 hours on weekends. And after that, I took like a 2 week off from my college to study 5 to 6 hours daily.
Right. So this is again very, very off the beat question, off the track question. You had so many things going on, right? You mentioned there were so many things that you were a part of and you excelled in it, right?
Yeah.
And you also took up GMAT. How did you prioritize? Well, this is important now and this is not. Was there any time where you had to not prioritize GMAT and you had to prioritize something else over GMAT? And how did you pick it back, if at all you did not prioritize GMAT at that time?
Yeah, sure. There were very many instances where I had to prioritize other things. But one thing I noticed was that even if I took 3 or 4 hours of my day in doing something else than the GMAT, I would usually study about the same only. So even if I had a full day and I was sitting all day, my course was usually similar to complete it than I was doing other things as well. So I noticed somewhere it was a psychological thing there.
Right.
So that is how I started prioritizing other things along with the GMAT as well. I knew a 2 hours there wouldn't really affect my GMAT preparation. So I
Oh,
think
that's
that's it.
awesome. So you never had a break. You were very consistent with your
Yeah,
preparation. That's
definitely.
that's amazing. I mean, because this is generally to say, even if someone is working or even studying, I mean, the prioritizing is a bigger situation when people have no, I have to go for work, I have to go travel places, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then how do I accommodate GMAT? I mean, this is
Yeah.
you definitely are in epitome of that, that situation you really could handle very well. Now, were they you definitely seem like a very strong girl and very sorted. But did you see yourself needing some other kind of a motivation or what kind of support system that you had, be it in college, maybe your mentor, or maybe Sandeep is your mentor himself, maybe your parents, anybody that kind of pushed you to kind of keep at it?
Yeah, sure. There were a lot of times that it was difficult to get myself motivated to solve, especially because I was like working alongside. So it was really tiring to come at the end of the day and find motivation to pick up the pen and start solving questions. So what I did was that my family actually helped me a lot. So I decided every night after 12 a.m., I would sit with my sister and watch a movie. So that was actually the motivation for me to know that 12 a.m. is the time that I would stop studying and finally enjoy. So I would work extra hard to not feel guilty about like watching a movie with my sister. So I watched like 20 to 30 movies in this time. And that was the biggest motivation for me.
I think this is like incredible. I've never thought, I mean, this is balancing act, very mind balancing. But
Yeah,
while you're preparing, that's the, the maximum peak that you watch, the maximum number of movies.
yeah,
It's a complete flip side story. I do not know how many people can actually try to implement that. You may advise,
yeah,
not advise. You all right. But great balance act, I would say. It just come across as a very, very strong individual. I mean, this is what you do, right? I mean,
yeah,
time will tell what all are your possibilities. Really, really incredible. Now, diving a little deeper into on the exam day, what are the sections, the order of your GMAT section that you took up, and why did you choose that order? And moving forward, anything that you saw out of the box or something that you're not really sure of, those questions you've never seen before? Could you
yeah.
take us through that entire journey on the exam day?
So I started with Quant, moved to verbal, and then data insights in my GMAT. So the reason I picked this section was mainly because, first of all, the first marks I gave were in this section, and I found them really comfortable. So Quant is something that I really like. So I've always liked maths from my childhood, and that is something I enjoy. So doing Quant first starts like activating my brain. Because when I saw that I dived straight into verbal, there were a lot of comprehensions. And I saw whenever I started verbal directly, I had to reread a couple of times because my brain wasn't in the zone. So I started at font and moved to verbal, and data insights was last because I knew that data insight used all the concepts from font and verbal, right? So once I've done each of the sections, I already have the concepts revised in my mind. So that is why I kept data insights for the last. And moving on to the second part of your question, I did see a lot of unusual things on the GMAT. So usually when I prepped for the verbal, I was seeing an accuracy of around 95 to 100% in my like any kind of test that I gave or any kind of questions that I solved. And those are pretty easy for me. So I expected that level of easiness. But when I actually gave the GMAT, I think the sections might be adaptive because after giving the quant, which was very easy, the verbal was incredibly difficult and it was more difficult than anything I had ever practiced. So I was actually very, very surprised on why each and every question of the verbal was extremely difficult.
Were you nervous at the time that what was your mind racing? Was it like, are you doing something wrong? Were such kind of thoughts coming into the exam time, or you were just in the flow?
Honestly, since I knew the sections were adaptive, I was actually glad that I was getting tougher questions. That must mean that I'm doing something right to get the quant questions and the verbal sections hard. So I was actually pretty happy with getting those hard questions.
Oh, that's nice. That's the spirit. And how did you
Yeah.
go about the data insights?
Yeah, so when I initially started the data insights, the timing was a big issue, and I was getting like 50 to 60% accuracy and not more than that. So I started giving the sectional mocks itself, the data insight specific like mocks we have. And
Right.
I saw that a lot of times I usually would really interpret the question, like what is the question asking? And do I have to select all the options or one in each table and things like that. But once I practiced a lot of questions, I automatically knew what the question was going to be after seeing the data. So I knew that the question would be like this or that. So once I was able to get that, I could skip like reading the questions a little bit, all those instructions. And that is how I increased my speed.
Right. No, but on the exam day, how was the data insight section?
Okay. Yeah, data insights was also relatively tough. It was easier than the verbal, but I would say it was pretty tough still.
In throughout. Okay. But in any case, you didn't run out of time, or, you were pretty much within the time limit itself.
Yeah, I would say that during the end part of the questions, I started getting really hard questions, and that was the time that I really started like feeling that I don't have enough time.
Right.
So I did have to guess on a few questions to actually complete the section. So that's what I did.
So when the score popped up, a 695, what was your exact moment of feeling? Was it a relief? Did you feel like, no, you could have done better? Or what was that moment, emotion that you had?
Yeah, so that was actually a very big shock to me. I took a GMAT official mock 3 days prior and I scored around 615. So that was what my expectation was to get a 615 or 625. I was not expecting more than that. So I came with the expectation of redoing the exam maybe 3 months later. And when I just saw the score, my immediate reaction was, I got a 695, but what does it mean? I have no idea because I've never gotten that score before, so I've never checked what does it exactly mean.
Really? You
So
never
that
thought
was
you
my
could
reaction.
score above 625? Were you saying 725 or 625?
So in my GMAT official, I got 615,
Right,
and in all other mocks, I was scoring between 600 to 650.
right. Okay, okay. Wow, that turned out to be really good in that case.
Yeah.
So amazing, amazing. So what are your final, because again, like I said, you've been, from the last 5, 10, 15 minutes of our conversation, whatever you've done, it's very inspirational. But if you want to summarize this into the checklist or probably, some of the do's and the don'ts, Riya, what would you suggest? What are for someone who is starting out, maybe who is similar undergrad student or maybe a working professional who's starting out with their GMAT journey? What are the things that they should really consider doing in the preparation, and what are the things that they should avoid?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the avoiding section first. So the biggest thing I avoided was like in the last 3 days, I avoided doing any mocks because I knew that in case I do mock and don't perform really well, I'll go with that mindset in the exam that this is exactly what I'm going to score. So what I did was I just did it like I mentioned 4 days before. So during that 3 days, I prepped. And I knew that whatever I prepped, I might get a 615 or I might get like a 695. So really, I had no idea what I was going to get. And that was something that actually motivated me. So when I saw hard questions, I wasn't like discouraged knowing that I'm just a 615. I was actually encouraged because I did not know if I could do it or not do it. So a biggest don't would be like attempting a mock right before your exam. And the second thing that I would really mention to avoid is that studying a lot on the morning of your exam or just like the night before because your brain would really get tired. You need to be a little fresh to give the exam. So, like, really see the questions from a fresher perspective instead of thinking this is not a question that I've practiced or this is a question I've practiced. So, you really need some time before your exam to just stay away from the GMAT, maybe watch a movie or two. And so, moving on to the do's of your exams, I would say that a lot of people that I've seen are like skipping the videos. So they practice a question and see the concept that they get wrong and skip the videos thinking that I got 70% questions right. I only need to see the 30% wrong. So no need to waste all my time in seeing the whole video, seeing the questions I've gotten correct. But I think that's a very like it may work for them, but in general, I think that is something that doesn't really work because approach matters a lot. We might get that one particular question right, but can we find another approach that works for all similar questions and something that we can reduce our time with? I think approach is the biggest thing that we need to focus on than individual questions. Because GMAT is not like a boards where we get exactly the same questions that we practice in our like pre-exams and all the tests. GMAT is something that gives very different questions. So approach is the most important part here.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. I mean, you as an undergrad student and really, really doing so many things, and then you also got your GMAT out of your way. Very clearly, you know your path ahead. Don't let this spirit die down because this is just so refreshing to see a young student achieving so many things, and it just tells others to watch out because then this is the kind of competition that we have, right? Really incredible. Don't, like I said, don't let the spirit of achieving more and more die down through your,
Yeah.
because the next thing that you do is to really step out to the world, and you are working professional. Let this spirit keep going through, because then you're sure to hit the best of the universities that you want to set your foot in. We
Yeah.
hope, and I really hope that that comes very soon. Are you planning to apply this year itself, or are you going to give it a wait until you get some years of experience?
I'm most probably planning to give it a wait. So I haven't actually decided yet to definitely pursue it from a foreign university or an Indian university. So since GMAT can be used for both ISP and foreign universities, so that is something I'm still considering.
Right. Do keep talking to all the bigger networks that you have.
Yeah.
From your college. They're the people who have done like extremely well. Like I said, personal favorite, and few others. Maybe I'll recommend few of your own old seniors, super seniors probably. But ideally, really hopeful that you get a great admit. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me this evening, and wish you all the very best for the future. It really looks bright to me. Okay, thank
Thank you
you
so
so much.
much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Bye. God
Thank
bless.
you.